All right, welcome to Shop Talks. Shop Talks is a presentation of Impressions, who puts the show on. Check out inkitchen.com and our YouTube channel. I'm from InkKitchen. We have major sponsors, Los Angeles Apparel and AlphaBroder, who you wouldn't have this for free if it wasn't for that. And Stalls, Transfer Express, LAT Apparel, Howard, Lane 7, and Hirsch all make this possible. So we have kind of a dream team of transfer people up here. I'm pretty excited about it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves and what company you're from. That way I can't get anything wrong. How's that?
I'm Josh Ellsworth with Stalls, Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing.
Kyle Eslinger with SanMar's Decorator and Digital Solutions team. I cover the Northeast region of the country.
Hi, my name is Carrie Terwilliger. I'm with FM Expressions. I'm the Director of Operations.
Deric Hoch, 613 Originals, VP of Operations.
And I'm Jody Mazade. I'm with Howard Custom Transfers, and I am the Director of Sales and Marketing.
All right, so I'm Rick Roth, and we were talking a little bit before. One reason that they're all up here is, I'll just say right away, they all make quality transfers. And they all have their specialties, and they all have people that are knowledgeable. And one reason that I started these shop talks is for introducing people that may not know who to trust. These are all people you can trust. They all know what they're talking about. And if you want to talk to them after this, they're all going to stick around. Some of them have booths. They're easy to contact. They're all good folks. So, and I want to say one other thing. We're selling posters back there. It goes to Adelaide's Place, which is a homeless program for women here in Atlantic City. The poster's great, hand printed, $10, and all the money goes to the charity. All right. So, what's so great about transfers anyway? How about just general? Who wants to say something about what's great?
I'll take that
about
one because I want to make one quick clarification. SanMar does not make transfers. So that's really important to know. But I do know a bunch of great people who do. And that's why I feel like sometimes I learn things through osmosis, right? Because I have relationships with the great people that are sitting on the stage. But what makes transfers so great, if you look at it from my standpoint, coming from a wholesale supplier of apparel and not actually manufacturing transfers, the vast majority of our catalog, in fact, probably everything, could be decorated via heat transfer. It's one of those decoration methods that really does not have an objection. And case in point, if you go on sanmar.com, you'll see our decoration spec sheets, which launched last January. They've been live now for over a year, and virtually everything will have heat transfer as a viable solution for decoration. That includes more challenging bags, that includes blankets, obviously flats, wearables, including headwear. So you name it, really it's a fix-all for so many different categories, and that's just one of the reasons why I think transfers are so great, Rick.
All right. What, Josh, what are the three things that you can dial in that make it a transfer more repeatable than really any other decoration technique?
Yeah, so you guys can hear me all right on this mic?
Yeah.
No?
We're going to turn that one up. Or Kyle, why don't you let them use yours for a minute?
Now you can hear me. Whoa. Wow. All right. Big difference. All right, so when we're talking about heat transfers, there are really three things that we need to measure accurately, and that starts with a good heat press and a good operator, and they're equally important. And those three things are time, temperature, and pressure. Time and temperature, pretty self-explanatory, but know that different heat press machines on the market measure those differently. Some not so well, but a lot of them that measure those very well. So first things first, it's important to make sure we can manage time and temperature accurately on the heat transfer equipment we're using if we expect to have happy customers and repeat customers. Otherwise, everything is challenging. Pressure. This is where 80% of heat applications fail, is because of inaccurate pressure. More pressure isn't better. Accurate pressure is best. And so when you look at a heat press investment, you really want to make sure that you're able to get your print area flat. Because I can tell you the majority of the technical support calls that I'm sure all of us take when we have a transfer quality issue, it's almost always due to not getting that item flat, completely flat on the heat press to allow for a even and accurate pressure.
So Jody, can you give a recipe to someone? Like your transfer on a particular garment, you can say what pressure, time, and temperature, and it will work every time?
So we generally try to give a range.
Because people's equipment and abilities are bad. But if they were good, would it work like that?
Pretty much. I mean, yeah, you give a recipe, so you give a time, temperature, and pressure, but realistically, like you said, you have low-end heat presses, you have high-end heat presses. The high-end heat presses are obviously going to be dialed in fairly well, so if we give exactly the right recipe, you should get exactly the right outcome. Realistically, not everyone can afford that high-end heat press, so if you have an entry-level heat press, we're going to give you a range. We're going to give you a range of temperature, range of pressure, and you're going to have a hot or cold peel, right? And you're going to get extras. Pretty much every vendor here is going to give you extras with your order, or you're going to go online and you're going to get samples and you're going to test it out beforehand so that you can dial everything in on your heat press.
Deric?
You hear me okay? To what Jody just said, yes, most of our transfers from 613 originals actually transfer in 7 seconds. So 7 seconds, medium to high pressure. There are some variables. We do have different formulas that require different application, but to be safe, to answer your question, if you've got a 100% cotton garment, almost any of our transfers will transfer that garment. Temperatures as low as 280 all the way up to 375, depending on the formula. So there is quite the range. And also,
Which is great compared to, like, I'm a screen printer. You can't tell someone what to set their dryer. So many dryers, somebody's in Arizona with no humidity, somebody's in Maine, and there's, 100% humidity. So you can't really tell people a formula like you can with a transfer.
and to Josh's point, pressure is very important, and that's actually a harder thing to nail down. Manual presses don't necessarily
can't
have
tell
a gauge.
people how many turns?
Yeah, how many turns do you do on which press? Our knowledge base on our website actually explains some of that, the different types of presses and how to adjust for pressure. Pneumatic, it would be best because then you can do that based on a PSI or a bar rather than 6 turns is high pressure, 3 turns is medium pressure.
Is there anything that measures that? Like you can calibrate other things. Can you calibrate the pressure? Is that possible even?
Yeah, I think one of the more exciting things even on the manual presses, while air pressure on a lot of machines adjusts based on the substrate you have loaded and the thickness, which saves you a step on having to adjust back and forth. But there are machines on the market, including the Stalls units and others, that will actually measure pressure to the digit. So when you lock that machine down, it reads like a scale of 1 to 9, which is a good point of reference to PSI. While it's not PSI, it's at least a consistent measurement, so you don't have to say, well, that feels like a medium, or that feels like a firm, and then my medium is different than Kyle's medium, than your medium pressure, right? So being able to measure that and calibrate it makes your job a lot easier. It makes it duplicatable and repeatable, which means you can hire for it, right, and scale with it, and that's important.
And one other thing to add to that on an air compressor driven pneumatic press, it actually, you can have everything set properly, but if your air compressor doesn't get to that in enough time, the first 3 seconds you're under pressured, you're going to have more problems. So it's very important to see how it ramps up and gets to that final pressure.
All right, what about locations? That's one thing I love about transfers. You can only put it on the front, right, of a shirt. That's the only place you can put a transfer.
Yeah, definitely not true. Our territory managers, very large group of individuals who cover the entire country for SanMar. They go out, they showcase our new products every single launch. A lot of those styles are decorated, and we have a whole team that identifies where on that garment, bag, cap, the logo should go. So, some of the more recent trends we're seeing are cap decoration, where you've got a 6-panel cap, decorating it on 1 panel. We've actually developed a cap specifically for heat presses. It's called our unipanel cap, and it is technically a 6-panel cap, but the buckram where that center seam is lives underneath a layer of fabric, so it plays along really nicely with any sort of cap press. We're seeing it on bags, as I mentioned earlier, nape of the neck, on the back, sleeve prints, down on the hem. I think when COVID came around, we had a lot of people working from home. Left chest logos were sometimes not high enough to be exposed during your virtual meeting. So we saw a lot of people actually decorating their collar. And a heat transfer gives you a lot of control when you're dealing with a very small space like that, whereas some other decoration techniques are a little bit more cumbersome when you're working with that area.
Even though we have DTG presses and screen print, we've been buying them a lot because just neither of those processes are super friendly for sleeves. Do you find a lot of you're selling transfers for people like that are otherwise printing the rest of it in some other way? Like, in other words, transfers are an add-on to decorating a whole garment, even if it's not all transfer or all printed.
Yeah, I can speak to that for sure. So I think, why transfers, going back to that, right? Transfers are incredibly scalable, right? So we have, at FM Expressions, we have customers that are a crafter business making something and selling it on Etsy, all the way up to some of the biggest lifestyle, athleisure, and athletic fanwear companies in the US, North America, and the world, right? So even those large companies, they have specific projects that a heat transfer makes more sense for them to apply some of the technical fabrics, right? Some of the difficult placements, also helps with inventory obsolescence for some of those big companies, that they can be super flexible with what they're decorating instead of building inventory and keeping that in stock, right? So for the crafter or the small business as well, it's super flexible, and you don't have to make the screens and run a press and have skilled labor, right? You can really quickly, I feel like we made it sound a little more difficult when we're talking about the time, temper, and pressure, right? Once you get it and you've got a good machine and it's dialed in, I could take anybody in here and in 15 minutes train somebody how to start running a press. Certainly, experience is valuable over time as well, but it's super easy to scale up and spin up additional labor when you need it.
Oh, it only takes us like 5 years to train someone to screen print, so yeah, that sounds pretty good. Josh, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just think the flexibility that we're all touching on is really key, right? And to key in on that from a logo location standpoint, understanding the advantages that you have with a heat press for branding locations is really important, because when we think of those branding locations with nearly any other process, there's something that inhibits us, whether that's varying a small logo from a short to a left chest to a back shoulder print, and having the flexibility to just load up the item, position, and press. No burning a screen, no trying to hoop the item. As long as we have the right accessory for the job to be able to fit that item onto the press, I like to say you can apply practically any product out there from a blank apparel wholesaler's catalog like SanMar with the right tools for the job.
I know you could do that. I'm still always amazed. You had those shoes, right? I brought you those shoes, and you were able to figure out how to put the transfers on them, right? So what about transfers in online stores? That seems like a growing thing also. Are you finding that you have people that are, they don't have to inventory the garments, just the transfers?
Yes, you want me to go? Jody, go ahead. Go ahead, Jody. You can jump in.
Yeah, I had this conversation last night with someone. He said he uses transfers for this exact reason, just efficiency. In starting online stores, e-commerce stores, it's easy for him. Print-on-demand model, it's the easiest solution.
I mean, if you're going to stock, transfers for your online business, you're talking like under $1 a lot of times for a transfer, right? Or not a lot of money, versus if you already decorated the garment, where you're talking about $5 or $6 or more, right, on the shelf.
And also the flexibility of the amount of SKUs you can create with one transfer. You're no longer laden to just, oh, well, these are all my small black shirts and that's how it's going to be. You can do white, you can do a multitude of colors and different products as well. So you've got a lot more flexibility. Flexibility is the key word here with transfers. It gives you the ability to put transfers in different locations, maybe create a different shirt with the same logo. One is a front, one's a back, and has an additional transfer on the left chest or a nape of the neck or somewhere else. And also tagless labels are something that we almost touched on, but it's another great way to label as you need. You can almost all the garments nowadays have tearaway labels, and you can do tagless labels right behind them with your own branding.
Transfers are improving greatly, obviously. You guys are at the forefront of all that. Would you say that you all have transfers that, without a lot of inspection, look no different than screen printed, like, at this point? I don't know if everybody knows that that's possible.
Yeah, sure. I think most of us brought some samples that we're happy to pass around and take a look at today as well. But yeah, certainly, I mean, the technology has changed considerably, right? And so a lot of the transfers, you can feel it the way it drapes on the garment. You know, FM, for example, we have a product called Vintage. It's nearly indiscernible between a screen print and a transfer, right?
I actually took one of those around and asked some screen printing companies what they thought of the print. I didn't print it myself, but what do you think of it? Only one knew it was a transfer, actually.
Yeah.
So I think that, definitely that's a change. I think at that same show, there was a guy that I knew who had worked at a big shop. He was going to start a shop. He was going to put all the plumbing in for screen washing, this, that, and other things. And we're like, you could just do these transfers, buy a heat transfer press and go out and start selling. And he did that. Like, he saved himself thousands of dollars and got into I think, the proper end of the business, which is the sales and marketing that's lacking versus the production. You guys are a very easy ramp up to production.
Yeah, I think, again, back to some of the small business owners, right? At the end of the day, and Gavin, the guest before, was talking about this a bit as well, is, don't undervalue your time, right? So when you're a small business owner, you're the entrepreneur, you're the manager, and you're the technician, usually all wrapped up in one, depending what hat you have on, right? But, your time is worth something. So when you are working on all that stuff and spending money on all that stuff, that's time that you could be working on building your brand, marketing, sales, managing, hiring, all those other things, right? So absolutely agree. If somebody's starting up in the industry, I don't know if anybody disagrees. I know there's other folks here, but I don't think there's a better way to start a small business than getting a heat transfer press and purchasing transfers from a reliable vendor.
I don't think you get a lot of argument. Even me, screen printer, I don't argue with you.
And I'd say even adding to not undervaluing your time is don't undervalue your space, right? Space is overhead in your business, and that overhead needs to be working for you. And so rather than thinking about having large facilities with lots of space to set up to do it a certain way, you can operate in a very small footprint. So not only is it scalable, but it's a lean technology. And I think that's really important. We don't burden ourselves with as much risk as we would with manufacturing space and manufacturing equipment. For the top of the line heat press, we're definitely sub $10,000, or you're getting a quality heat press for in the couple $1,000 range. And that's a really lean way to get started and to print on demand. So printing exactly what you want when you need it and not before, to make sure we're not tying up our cash flow in pre-printed inventory, et cetera.
All right, let's shift gears here a little bit. So from what's so great about transfers, which is like a lot of the simple basic stuff, is that they are really a great answer to so many decorating problems. What's so great about them? What's so cool? Like what stuff have you come up with lately in your businesses that you're excited about, or that your customers are excited about, that maybe something even you didn't think of would be on a transfer at some point?
So from 613, we recently launched a puff product that emulates a very good screen printed puff product. Puff is a very fad-driven print style.
I'm glad it emulates a good screen printed puff product, because there's plenty of bad out there.
There absolutely is. It's a difficult product to make even from a screen printed perspective. We get nice height and good flexibility and washability and multitude of colors and depth of color. So definitely one of our newer products. This is a 2-color version. We've got one flat with one puff. You really need to pass it around. I can pass it around later. You can take a look at it or come by our booth. Another one that we just launched, which is our glitter product. So it's a 4-color process glitter that actually you can print as many colors as you like and get a glitter backer to it. You can put glitter in different areas. It doesn't have to be just all in one area. That all comes down to art prep. And speaking again to something that Josh said, what are you getting with transfers? You're getting years of experience that you don't have to go through and get that experience the hard way.
Shiny is good, crows and people like shiny things, so that's really good to have those shiny ones.
So
Jody,
coming from the blank supplier side of things, and having again a team of territory managers out there showcasing products with heat transfers on them, I feel like my thunder will get stolen by everybody up here who actually makes this stuff. So I should probably get my opinion in early, because really what happens is our sales team goes out there, they showcase all of these great decorated samples, and inevitably the heat transfers get the most response oftentimes. And I think back to my days as a decorator prior to coming to SanMar. I owned a screen printing shop, had heat transfer capabilities, and it was often viewed as the temporary tattoo of the industry. And this is relatively frequent back to 2008, 2009 when I had my shop. People think about the old iron-on presses and coming off in the wash after one cycle, and that's just simply not the case anymore. The products that we're seeing our garments decorated with for our territory managers to showcase are often getting the most response from the customer, whether it's a promotional product distributor or a decorator, looking at that and saying, wow, that's freaking awesome, who did that? Or who can do that? And it could be anything from a molded emblem, PVC, silicone, leather. The possibilities are endless, and it's just a great response that we see, even though we don't actually make these materials.
I'll echo what he said in that, our customer base ranges from entry level, side hustlers and Etsy shops to high end retailers that, you're probably all wearing right now. So they're, transfers are not taboo anymore. They're not the Care Bear 70s.
There's still a bias against it. I have certain customers, I'll say, we're going to use an indirect print. Because they just don't want to hear the word transfer. They don't want to hear it. It's funny. I mean, it is an indirect print, right?
You can always count on Rick to spin it.
You print it on a carrier sheet, and then you put it on with heat. It's indirect print.
So we also came out with a puff product a couple weeks ago. I guess it's been months now. I don't know. Time flies.
It's COVID time.
It is. So yeah, puff has been super popular. It's bizarre to me, honestly, but it has been crazy popular, and I would say it's most popular with our screen print customers because puff is I don't know, puff is difficult, and
it shouldn't be, but it is.
It is difficult. It's just a hassle, I guess, is a better word.
No, it shouldn't be, but it is.
The other one we just released is we call it a fashion reflective because it's available in, it's not a safety rated reflective, but it is available in 14 stock colors. So it's just a water-based reflective option. And then...
Which is really a pain to print, I will say. We printed hundreds of thousands of shiny shirts. It's not easy.
Yeah. And then the third one that we're releasing in the next couple weeks is direct-to-film. I'm sure you've heard nothing about that.
It's what?
Yeah, direct DTF. And then the other one I brought with me today that...
We're going to pass these around after.
Yeah, we'll pass them around. This is our version of the mimicking screen print, so we call this vintage wash. We've had this since, 2006-ish. I don't know. That's our version, where you can't really feel it on the garment.
Very cool. Carrie? Deric?
Yeah, so at FM Expressions, our new product that we have launched is also DTF that Jody was talking about. So this is an example of a full-color digital print. FM's been selling processed full-color transfers for many, many, many years. DTF is here. It's here to stay. I would expect that we're going to see changing technology over the next couple years, similar to how it was in the commercial offset industry. These transfers, you can buy one piece, 5 pieces, 10 pieces, right? So you're getting full color design, right? If you're buying 50 pieces, 75 pieces, 100 pieces, there's some other products that likely make more sense from a cost perspective. But this is a great opportunity. We were talking about scalability before, right? If somebody, say, has an e-com site and you want to test print something, you could either order them in advance or literally wait until you get an order and place an order for some DTF transfers. That shirt or that design starts selling really well. Now you can go ahead and feel confident to buy 100 and throw them in stock, right? And you've got the inventory risk of paper on a shelf behind you instead of t-shirts that you're printing and hoping somebody's going to buy that size. Right, so DTF is now available. I believe, check the website because I'm an ops person, not a marketing person. But I think you could buy one piece of this for $3.50 plus shipping.
You know, it's funny. One of the bigger disconnects is between artists and art community and knowing about transfers. Actually, when really their visions. They can make stuff that they want to make to test it out, and I don't think they realize that. So anyway, little aside there.
Yeah, I just, we brought up a bunch of other samples that we'll be happy to pass around too, but you can see the difference between the quality and the feel of digital versus some of the screen printed transfers as well, the vintages that we were talking about, right? There's pros and cons to all of FM's products, and I'm sure to everybody else's as well, right? It depends what you're decorating. I always laugh about it, right? Because I've had some customers before go, man, that feels really heavy on the shirt. I don't want it to feel that heavy. And then I've had other customers feel a different product and man, that feels really light. I really wish it felt heavier and had more substance to it, right? So it depends on what you're decorating and what the artist that's designing it is trying to accomplish. There's a different product out there for you.
It's maybe hard to know all the different transfer products that you all have and what purpose for all of them, but it's still not as hard as screen printing.
Yeah, and I'll add, what we're seeing out there really is best summed up in 2 words, tech and texture. And so huge growth still in technical fabrics, recycled fabrics, tri-blends, just more synthetics. Direct-to-film as a technology meets these fabrics really well if it's the right transfer, if the right adhesive is used. And so being able to decorate technical fabrics in full color without all the complexity of you need this much of an outline or I need to reduce your colors, it really has the ability to change your wholesale process. You can just say yes to the job without compromising the client's artwork. And so that flexibility with having a low temp digital transfer that can apply, stretch, recover is phenomenal. And so fun little fact, if you watched any of the NFL Combine that just happened, the transfers actually on that compression gear are direct-to-film transfers, right, with a little perforation. So you get really creative with the artwork, including variable data, like individual names and numbers, because now we're digital, so we're down to quantities of 1. And so I think that's really a trend, is the screenless transfers, as I like to call them, because we don't have any fixed costs, and it really powers print on demand. Then the question is not whether or not you can order one, but how can you order one the most cost-effective way so all of your labor isn't tied up in actually acquiring the transfer itself? And so I think you're going to see new opportunities from hopefully all of the transfer suppliers for connectivity to your business. And then the other thing is texture. We make it a little thicker. You guys want it even thicker. You want it to puff more. You want it, and so we're seeing a huge drive to dimensional as a category, so whether that is PVC patches or embroidered patches or puff embroidery. I like to give the analogy is some of you probably remember Radio Shack. I was reading a book and I saw an ad in it that referenced Radio Shack, and all of the things that they had in their ad were now consolidated into this. And so I have this vision, plug your ears, screen printers and embroiderers and everybody else, that one day all of these other technology sets will be able to be possible in 16 by 20 dimension on your tabletop. And so we're seeing a lot of consolidation. So rather than having to embroider a cap, which may take a little more time, I can source a patch, I can press it, and I can grow my capacity really quickly.
Wow. It's true. It's really like accelerating even, right? All right, maybe questions? Yeah. All right, questions. You got transfer experts up here. Actually, I want to say one other thing. Seems like as your products get more diverse and able to handle everything, a little bit on what you're saying, Josh, increasingly any kind of aid that you have in buying the right product, and then on the other end, matching it up when it comes in with the garment that it goes on are more of the stumbling blocks. Always in any process, something holds you up, and then you get through there, and something else is in your way. It seems more and more it's the production software, if you will, and the ordering are going to get like the next frontier in a way, because otherwise you're so damn fast.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So first thing I would recommend for anybody who is new to transfers, or if you're looking at a new vendor, I believe I speak for all of us, that you can go to our websites and order a sample pack. It's probably the best thing to start with. You likely get a catalog, transfer samples from different types of products that we all offer. I know for FM, right, it says right on the sample what it is, what the temperature, time, pressure, application instructions on everything, so that it's a good way to start. Yeah.
And also, each of us has a knowledge base where you can go to and look at the garment you're looking for, find that, and then find the proper formula for it by utilizing our knowledge bases.
I think, is it Josh, you had seminars where you get the sample pack and you could be sort of applying them at home at the same time, is that right?
Yeah, we have a fun little event. It's called Toast to Transfers, mainly because we like transfers and we like drinks. And so you can buy a little kit and then sign up for this webinar and show up that night, and you actually have a live instructor and you'll have the sample kit. So you're pressing along, and I think we hold those monthly from our Transfer Express division. So it's a fun way to get hands-on and get a little bit of a trade show experience from home throughout the year.
And what kind of beer do you send out with those transfers?
Yeah, we don't send the beer, unfortunately, but you
BYOB.
can get whatever kind you want.
All right. Anything else you guys want to say about what's wonderful about transfers, or should we do questions? Anything burning comments first? No? All right. Questions? Do we have an extra mic or not in the end?
Yeah, they use.
It's a handout.
Oh, I can-
Yeah, Josh, you want to share with Kyle? Josh, you share with Kyle, yeah? Okay.
Thanks. For the puff products, how well do they launder compared to other types of transfers?
Quite well. The actual washing instructions come with each of our transfers, or I'm sorry, they're on our knowledge base. And also in our sample pack, I believe the laundering instructions are in there as well. Basically, cold water wash inside out, flat dry, you'll never have a problem. But I'll be honest with you, we've done multiple laundering tests, and our puff transfers do well with basically everything. But of course, the best experience, because of the differences in types of laundering you might have. Some have impellers, some do not. So your best bet to be safe inside out. The one thing I will say about puff is 24 to 48 hours before you're stretching on it and doing crazy stuff. Let it set, let it exist, and then you'll have no problems.
Want to talk? You have some too, right, Puff?
Yeah, what he said. I think you're not gonna get as much laundering out of it as you would, what we call Howard multipurpose. So like your everyday transfers.
But screen printed Puff doesn't launder that great either.
Exactly. So
Actually, screen printed puff probably launders worse.
It's not-
if I'm being honest.
you're gonna get more than 10 washes out of it. But it's not magic.
Right.
On our-
And yeah, I think you're actually right. I think it actually works better. It will
I'm a
launder
former
better.
screen printer. I had a small screen print shop for many years. That's actually where I cut my teeth. So the transfer for me, I used to teach classes on screen printing once upon a time, and the key takeaway from one of my guys was, I was his mentor, so to speak, and he put on his website. He's like, a wise man told me once. He said the best way to screen print a shirt is not to screen print a shirt.
And then just for some clarity, screen printed transfer is a great option, but also know that you can access puff in other categories like heat transfer films. And so if you have a personalization or a quantity of one, right, that allows us to complement the two products together.
Other questions?
Getting back to your original subject, if I could direct this to stalls, if I had a heat press that is about 5 years old, is it possible that the temperature has changed? And if so, can it be recalibrated?
If it's 5 minutes old, it could have changed, actually.
Yeah, and the reality is, I guess, basic heat press maintenance, part of that I think should be getting temperature strips or figuring out, there's different tools for you to measure your temperature. A heat gun isn't the most effective way to actually measure the temperature. So temperature strips are something that says that what it says on the control board is what is actually on all four corners or all areas of the heating element. Certainly if you have a quality machine, most of them have even heat across the surface with maybe a 5-degree variance, that's okay. But really where you get into an issue is when it's out of calibration. So I think that's just a good maintenance thing to do every 6 to 12 months. Certainly if you're moving the unit or you've just gotten the unit shipped to you, it's a great time to check it out. It can definitely be recalibrated, absolutely. And you just have to call wherever you bought your heat press at Hottronics. Technician will walk you through or send you a video on how to do it.
How often do your transfers fail from unequal pressure or the wrong temperature? Do you think it's a lot? Yeah.
That's the only time they should fail. Ultimately, is proper pressure, heat, and time. Is essentially, those are the three things right from the beginning. As long as you're doing those right, you should have no problems. I will say also about heat presses, they are a varying quality, right? So a lower quality heat press might get to a temperature. So that'll get to, let's say, 320 degrees. And as you press, it'll get lower and lower because it can't recover fast enough. Whereas if you have a higher quality heat press, it actually doesn't even, if you were to measure with like a heat gun, it doesn't even register at that 300 because as it actuates, it ramps up that heat and gets to a set temperature. So don't use a heat laser gun to test it. You really do need the strips. You lay them in the corners and in the center, and you'll get a much better understanding of your heat press's platen.
And what a lot of people don't realize, just to follow up on Deric's point, is like some of the heat presses, and I'll call out one that nobody on the floor cares about, like a fancier studio off of Amazon. I literally took one of those to our shop and we cut it in half because I wanted to see what was inside of it. And it literally had about a 16th inch thick heat platen. So yes, it was measuring the temperature from a screw on top of the heater, not even with a probe on the surface. And so what happens is you're pressing something like a job of 50 sweatshirts, hopefully we're landing those types of jobs, and the heater isn't recovering quick enough. And so by the time you get to shirt number 12, the temperature still looks like it's right because it's reading from an incorrect place, but you're actually losing heat. It can't recover quick enough. So there's a lot more to a heat press than just what you see on the outside. So I highly recommend one of the US manufactured machines.
Amen. Other questions?
I have one question. Do you guys come across any, like you do a transfer on the T-shirt and then the customer calls you back and says that the T-shirt died through the transfer?
Bleeding and dye migration. So like bleeding and dye migration?
How often does that happen, or have you ever had it happen?
So as a supplier of apparel, you'd be shocked to learn that we get that call somewhat frequently. And usually the question is, there's something wrong with these shirts? Potentially, but usually it has a lot to do with heat and really making sure that heating element is reading accurately, as Josh said, because dye migration is all about predominantly synthetic garments, right? Cotton very rarely migrates. We have seen some very rare cases where perhaps the dye was not set in the garment and it did run. But the difference between a cotton and a polyester is 100% synthetic, and throughout the manufacturing process, that dye will set, and then as the heating element manipulates it, that dye will start to bleed. So, you guys are the professionals. I believe you have products that really can mitigate that process.
Yeah, I believe we all offer a blocker product that will, if you do have a specific garment that is problematic, it's usually going to be a dye sublimated garment. So a sublimated garment, you can usually tell it by the inside is a different color than the outside of the garment. So if you've got a white inner, that means that was dye sublimated in a different process. And those are the worst as far as bleeding. You'll see it in
camo
jerseys.
ones especially, right?
Yeah, exactly. So a blocker product might be necessary for that, but another way to mitigate that is the lowest temperature transfer you can get. That will help mitigate the overheating of it, the recapsulating of the dye to then bleed out into the transfer.
There is no one answer to these things, though. There is not one product that works on everything. There's everyone wants a shortcut. You have to test a lot of things. There's no way around it. You have to test it, or maybe Kyle, in his case, might know the information about his garments, but you cannot, there's not one thing fixes everything. We get that in screen printing, too. I just use this ink on everything. No, you don't. It's like, then you're not doing everything. It's you might need a dye blocker on one, another low temperature, right? It's not always the same, right?
Partnering with any of us, honestly, is your best bet because we have the experience, we can answer it quickly, and we can, get you out from behind that problem.
Just a quick note, because I know Kyle's not going to self-promote here, but I'll promote his stuff. So if I like to not, if you have to do the dye blocker on sublimated, we have to do it, right? Silicone transfers is another option to be able to combat those fully sublimated. But if we just have a polyester that has some unstable dyes in it that wants to bleed, I usually would rather address that with my blank apparel sourcing if I can, rather than the decoration, because as soon as you add a blocker to the decoration, yes, we make them feel as nice as we can, but you are having a trade-off on the graphic feel. And so SanMar has a line that's called Posi Charged, which is a cationic-based polyester
that they guarantee not to bleed. So it allows me to pay a little bit more for the blank, but decorate it with the thinnest, softest, lightest weight transfer and trust that I'm going to have a quality result every time.
And I will say that even with a dye blocker, it's going to be thinner than printing with a dye blocker in most cases.
And thank you for that, Josh. I also want to call out as a last resort, if you do run into challenges with decoration, you can't quite figure it out, you don't know what's going on, we have a solution on SanMar.com. If you hover over resources at the top of our homepage, click on Decorator and Digital, that takes you to our team landing page, and right at the top you'll find a link that says Product Decoration Solutions. Click that, fill out the form. We're very in-depth with it. We want to know temperature, heat settings, regardless of the decoration method. Give us as much information as you can, so that way our team of experts, which would essentially be my team, and we sometimes do reach out to our affiliate partners for additional advice if we can't quite figure it out. We'll do our best to try some variable changes and then provide you with additional samples, so that way you can put those variable changes into play and hopefully solve that problem.
All right, other questions?
For the dye migration, will we know right away, the first one out, if we're going to have a problem with a camo shirt? Oh, how long?
No, it could take
Unfortunately,
like
take
weeks.
Actually, printing is worse. I was on a Facebook thing, which is like to amuse myself, and someone was saying, well, you just print the ink thicker. Like, that's the worst thing you could do. Because if you printed the ink thicker, you'd need more heat, which would make it bleed more, and it would just take longer. So I don't know if all of you are familiar with dye migration, but it's a pretty sickening thing to have happen sometimes. So you might put a transfer on, since we're talking about transfers, it's fine, and then like 2 weeks later, slowly the dye would come through and you would see it. So like the customer sees it and you didn't see it, for example.
The worst example I have is players leave their uniforms sometimes in the hot car, right, before the game or after the game. So you press it at low temp, you think it's all good, and then those white numbers on those red jerseys turn out pink when they're running around the field next time. Not a good look.
And this is not to scare you guys off of transfers, because that happens with screen printing as well.
Screen printing
It's a
is
very
worse.
specific problem. Yeah, exactly. It's a very specific problem to a very specific type of garment. Your normal 100% cotton, you're never going to really have this problem. 50/50s, you're likely not going to have this if you're ordering a proper blank. 100% polyester and dye sublimated fabrics is where you'll start to see that. So just be cautious and always test.
If you go to inkkitchen.com, there is a test for dye migration. Basically, you take a piece of white cloth and you put some plasticizer, which is one part of your regular inks that most people use, a couple drops, heat it for a certain amount of time, and you'll see how much of the color comes out. That will tell you what you're dealing with. There's almost always some color that comes off. Maybe not always, but mostly. And you just over time learn that, oh wow, this is bleeding terribly, or it's bleeding slightly, and that will tell you what kind of transfer to buy or how to print it. Hardly anybody tests their garments, but you should. It's like, you know?
If there's a lesson here too, I think, to Kyle's point earlier, right, is you get what you pay for at the end of the day. If you find a deal on Amazon for shirts for 35 cents and you think you got a great deal, if the pricing's much different than what these guys are doing, then you're compromising quality at the end of the day.
All right, let's hand some of these samples out, right? Is there any that you want to talk about before you hand them around that you haven't already discussed?
Yeah, I can show a couple things,
Yeah.
I guess. So I showed the digital full color. This is a screen printed full color transfer as well, right? So if you're doing larger quantities, not 3 pieces, right, but it's going to be more cost effective at 50 pieces and above. This happens to be one that is intended for light shirts, so there's no white backer on it. So it usually goes on a white shirt or on a light shirt, and you can kind of get that full color vintage feel. It's super lightweight feel on that. And I would say just one other to compare to is this is our darks version of that. So this is a similar product, but it's got the white backer. So you're going to feel that there's a little more hand to it, right? But this is going to be opaque on dark garments. I brought some other stuff for vintage, some foil, a couple things. So I'll pass those around, and if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to come on up after as well.
And a couple I'd like to highlight.
direct-to-film technology. Not all direct-to-film is created equal, right? And so examine the transfers, get samples. You're going to have varying results on wash durability, finish, feel, application temperature, how it applies. And so this is an example of what it can feel like on the garment. And what I want to point out about that, it's a lot to do with the art as well. So some of the burden as an artist is on you. Let's create some show-through areas, even though it's a digital transfer and I can put a picture on it. Let's create some space for that garment to breathe, and we'll get an overall better quality product. Also, just highlighting that you can apply textured fabrics, right? And so that's always interesting to me, is that we can put heat transfers on top of textured fabrics that otherwise would be difficult. And then we finally conquered headwear with heat printing, right? Anybody who hasn't pressed a cap in 5 years with the latest equipment, you probably don't want to use heat transfers on your caps because you're creasing them, right? Or scorching them or damaging. And so now with heat presses that press with lower heat, we can do PVC patches on demand, and we can do all sorts of different types of patch products, okay? And so I think that's one of the big opportunities, is be able to stretch. What my favorite thing about patch products is it never moves off of the heat press. So when I think of any flat transfer, eventually there's a quantity where it's going to make more sense if you have the capability to direct screen print that. But if you're a small decorator and you work the patch products into your sales process, that's not moving to a better way to do it. And so you can land multi-thousand piece orders in the headwear category with dimensional emblems and patches. So real opportunity there.
You know, the Stahl's heat press is a great thing. You know what? I don't mind touting that because it's one of my favorite pieces of equipment that we've bought. So it has bottom heat, it has silicone on it so that it doesn't crease them. It's a great product, which is actually a trick. If you don't have a heat press with bottom heat, the other thing is to tack something down and then heat it on the other side. Did you show all your samples here?
I'm gonna give you a quick refresher. So it's a 2-color puff. These are 2 of our specialty products, special effects, if you will. So we've got it's a dimensional puff and then a flat print, so 2-color together. And then this is our glitter, 4-color process glitter product. We have regular products just like FM and Howard's and Stahl's. Feel free to come by our booth. We have sample packs we're giving away. We're also giving away shirts, so you can see us over there, 613 Originals. I don't know our booth number off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
And then Howard is
319 says Cat.
Howard's here. You can see their thing, and Stahl's is up in the front. FM's not here at the show, right? Okay. All right. Other questions out there? Don't be sorry. What's the question?
This is for Josh. I saw one of your hat samples was pressed on right over the seam. You can do that successfully?
Yeah, so what's really exciting about decorating headwear with really any transfer, but I really like emblems and patches because they cover really well, or thicker transfers, is that we can go directly over the seam on a 6-panel cap. Actually, we're to the point now where we have people pressing transfers onto the mesh on the side of the cap, or even the leather strap that you see on some of the cap styles. So we call it the Hotronics 360 because you literally can do 360 degrees around the cap on the machine. It's pretty cool.
No, it's kind of a game changer, some of these. I mean, we have somebody and they want to do small quantities like for a store, and it has 2 locations, each of which have like 22,000 stitches. Like, it's going to be easier to put a patch on.
You know, it's a good point actually about transfers too, right? Is the technology changes so quickly, not just in transfers and screen printing, but embroidery and DTF and all those things, right? So, you know, I think it's a good case of why it's a great idea to partner with a supplier, right? Because we need to invest in the new technologies. We need to be doing R&D, figuring out what's going to be new a year or 2 from now, right? And making it easy for all of you to spend your time decorating, making money, instead of having technology, you know, at your company that you've got to replace 2 years from now.
All right. How about a hand for our panelists here? That's a good job. I'm more charged up about transfers than ever. So I want to thank our sponsors again: Los Angeles Apparel, AlphaBroder, Stahl's, Transfer Express, LAT Apparel, Howard Custom Transfers, Lane 7. Without them, you wouldn't have this free information. Check out inkitchen.com. This video, along with all the other videos that we do on Shop Talks, are up at the inkitchen.com website, YouTube channel. All right, thanks for coming.